In the summer of 1944, as Allied forces pushed deeper into Nazi-occupied Europe, the outcome of World War II still hung in the balance. Victory was far from certain, but what if I told you that one of the Allies' most powerful weapons wasn't a tank or a bomber or even a gun? It was a lie, an elaborate theatrical illusion, brought to life by a secret U.S. Army unit made up not of soldiers, but of artists, sound engineers, and actors. This is the unbelievable true story of the Ghost Army, a group that turned deception into an art form, and may have saved tens of thousands of lives in the process. They were officially known as the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, but to those in the know, they were the Ghost Army. Activated in January 1944, this top-secret unit was made up of 1,100 men, a bizarre mix of fashion designers, billboard painters, set decorators, art students, and sound specialists. Many were recruited from New York art schools and advertising agencies. Among them were names who would later become famous, like Bill Blass, the future fashion icon, and Ellsworth Kelly, the painter. But in 1944, their canvas was war, and their brushes were deception. The Ghost Army's mission was unlike anything else in the Allied playbook: to impersonate entire divisions of the U.S. Army and trick the Germans into thinking forces were where they weren't. The Germans were constantly tracking Allied radio signals, aerial reconnaissance, and troop movements, so the Ghost Army decided to give them something to see and hear. That was utterly fake. Let's start with the visuals. They built rubber tanks, life-size replicas of Sherman tanks that weighed less than 100 pounds and could be inflated like a bouncy castle. From a distance or aerial view, they looked entirely real. Alongside them, they assembled inflatable trucks, artillery, and even aircraft. When photographed by enemy reconnaissance planes, the illusion was perfect. But visuals were only part of the trick. The Ghost Army also included a team from the Signal Company Special, who created fake radio transmissions to impersonate actual U.S. divisions. They studied the radio fingerprints of real units, mimicking the way certain operators tapped their Morse code. The patterns of conversation, even their accents. Meanwhile, the sonic unit used enormous speakers to broadcast recordings of tanks rumbling, troops marching, and construction sounds, sometimes up to 15 miles away. They would even stage fake camps, complete with dummy laundry hanging from fake tents, simulated campfires, and soldiers walking around in borrowed uniforms from other units to maintain the illusion. Their operations were more than art projects. They were acts of high-stakes psychological warfare. In one of their most impressive missions, Operation Viersen, in March 1945, the Ghost Army pretended to be two full divisions, over 30,000 men. Using just 1,100, they deployed hundreds of inflatable tanks, broadcast fake radio chatter, and made so much staged noise that German scouts reported it as a legitimate military buildup. As a result, the Germans repositioned key artillery and troops to defend against a phantom attack, completely missing the real crossing of the Rhine happening miles away. The operation was a complete success, and not a single Ghost Army soldier was killed. The men of the Ghost Army faced danger, too, though unarmed and technically non-combatants. They operated close to enemy lines. If discovered, they wouldn't just be killed. They risked being executed as spies. Yet their weapons were never bullets. They fought with creativity, silence, and illusion. They were magicians of war, and their greatest trick was remaining a secret. For decades, the Ghost Army's existence was classified. The veterans who had risked their lives were told to never speak of their missions. It wasn't until 1996, more than 50 years later, that the truth began to emerge. And when it did, it sounded like fiction. Imagine a war operation where a Broadway set designer created camouflage, where rubber tanks were more powerful than steel ones, where sound engineers and painters defeated the Nazi war machine, not with violence but with imagination. It's estimated that the Ghost Army conducted over 20 deception missions in Europe, each one saving thousands of lives by drawing fire away from actual combat zones. Military historians now believe their efforts shortened the war and contributed to the success of the Normandy invasion and the Allied advance through France and Germany. And yet, they remained unrecognized for decades. Some of these men went back to ordinary lives. Some became artists, some remained anonymous, but all carried the weight of a secret so wild, so strange that few would believe it without proof. In 2022, nearly 80 years after their service, Congress finally awarded the Ghost Army the Congressional Gold Medal, one of the highest honors in the United States. It was a long overdue tribute to soldiers who never fired a shot, yet waged war in one of the most extraordinary ways imaginable. The story of the Ghost Army reminds us that not all heroes carry rifles. Some carry paintbrushes, some carry blueprints, and some carry the burden of a lie so perfect it helped bring down an empire